I think, yeah, we're good right now. Yeah. Can you hear us though? I'm like yelling. Okay, they're saying thumbs up right now.
All right.
Yeah.
This meeting is being live streamed. Okay. Put this in slideshow mode. Usually we like record these with the cloud, but yeah, they got YouTube. It take me so long to figure out how to share my screen. All right.
Yeah, they can see it. Yeah.
All right. You can see it now. All right. I guess you guys have waited long enough. It is 2:05. I guess the people that are gonna come here will come in due time. By the way, how many people are here for the writing workshop?
Yeah.
All right.
Fine.
Probably. Wait. I think 4, including me.
So 3.
Yeah, so
Okay,
3.
so that's 18.
Oh no, 11.
11.
Yeah.
So 4.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, we just have to check numbers and stuff. Mandatory thing. Anyway, we should get started now. Hello, I'm the writing director. This is the second writing workshop. Now, I really apologize for this. I didn't really have a lot of time to work on this slide, so a lot of it is like already from previous workshops. And also, I kind of got caught up in a lot of things. So I didn't really have time to like kind of practice what I'm saying. So if I'm like being really slow with what I'm saying and like I'm stuttering a lot, then yeah, that's my fault. It's my bad. So we're probably just gonna be stumbling through this workshop. We're gonna be tripping, we're gonna be falling, we might set ourselves on fire and like fall down a canyon, but like let's go. We need to plan our story. So disclaimer, some material today is borrowed from Video Game Writing from Macro to Micro by Maurice Suckling and Merrick Walton. I think I might have said those names right. I don't know. As for what parts are taken, I also do not know this, but it doesn't matter. All right, so typically, and when it comes to planning stories, there, at least for regular writers, there are around 2 different like sides to planning a story, and then like some middle ground. How many of you guys have heard the term pantser versus planners, or discovery writers versus planning? All right. Well, so basically, pantsers kind of discover the story as they write. They might have like they might have an idea of the beginning and the end. They don't know what the hell is happening in the middle, and they're not gonna bother trying to like plan. The whole point of being a pantser is that you just kind of is that you are not encumbered by outlines or like what needs to happen. It just kind of sprouts off naturally depending on where you think it should like naturally go next. Planners, on the other hand, outline the story in varying degrees of detail before writing the story proper. So before they start actually writing the story, they have like outline. They have an outline detailing story beats. It's because they need to have some sort of idea of where the story is even going to go before they can write it. As you can probably imagine, game writing really depends on planning. There are very few times where you can get away with pantsing a game story because people need to know where the hell your story is going, and it doesn't bode well for your team if they're asking you, okay, who's the main antagonist of this story? Because I want to work on it right now, and you're like, I don't know. That happened with Yakuza 5, and well, the story. There's a reason why the game's story is one of the most divisive in the fandom. So yeah, if you're gonna be a game writer, please try and be a planner, even if you're naturally a pantser. So how do you do this? How do you plan a story? Well, it's actually not that far different from writing a novel or something. Like in regular stories, there are several structures and methods to implement in terms of plotting your story. What you will use will depend heavily on your own style and what your team needs. But we'll cover a few basics to get you started. We're not going to cover everything in terms of like structure and stuff. You can, I think, in order to achieve the one that like fits you best, as you'll have to do some like outside research and like kind of tinker a little bit to make sure that the way you're structuring your story and outlining it is effective for both you and your team. So let's talk about the traditional structures of stories. So you guys might have seen this. You might have tinkered with this in like elementary school or something, maybe even like middle or high school. So this is a regular old plot triangle. Basically, the idea of it is it kind of gives a visual indicator of where the story should like kind of go in terms of like tension and things. So you have the beginning, you have the beginning of the story, and it's usually like pretty calm, right? You get some exposition, and then the exciting incident happens like right around here, and that's where the story really starts to pick up, and the MC is usually like forced to like go on this adventure or wants to go on the adventure. The middle part is like the triangle. It's like the triangle itself. You got the rising action, which is just like coming up to the climax, to the top of the triangle. You got the climax itself, which is right at the top. So this should be like when like tension is like at its highest. It is like when the stakes start finally like playing in. I guess, well, you should set up the stakes beforehand, but like this is when they'll finally like be like realized or something. And then the end is where everything kind of starts dying down after the climax. I think in the plot triangles I've seen, the falling action isn't actually like doesn't go right back to the level of beginning. It usually kind of like ends around here, but that's kind of nitpicking. So at the end, you'll have a falling action, which is kind of like stuff that needs to be, which is kind of like tying up loose ends before you reach the final resolution of your story, which is something like, oh, and the heroes lived happily ever after until the next story. So the good thing about having a plot triangle like this is that it doesn't need to just be applied to the main story of the game. It can be applied to actually many stories within your main story. So if you have a bunch of sub stories or like just little quests here and there, you can actually apply this very, very same plot triangle to them instead of just instead of just using that for your main story. It's broad enough to where you can do that with like almost everything. Probably shouldn't use it on everything, but you could. So we'll be moving on to the types of structures in games. So linear storytelling is pretty straightforward. Get it? Because it's straight. But basically, linear storytelling is there's not really that many choices you can make. No matter how you play the game, if you do all the missions, then the story will always be the same. And this is really good if you just want to tell like a straight up story that like and this is also really good in like smaller games where you might not have the opportunity to be able to branch off into like multiple paths. So this is demonstrated through I believe Twine, which is a game engine we've mentioned earlier, and we will cover Twine later on next week. So yeah, this is linear storytelling is pretty, you know, you get it. There's act 1, act 2, act 3, and it always plays out exactly the same. Assuming the player is always progressing through the main story, that is. Fractal storytelling. Actually, I don't really know this one too much, but basically, judging from the example here, fractal storytelling is basically you have a beginning point, but then depending on your choices within the beginning, it splits off into like completely different paths depending on what you want to do. So example that you probably use for this is Fallout New Vegas. There are several factions that you can work for and can like help in order to achieve their like retrospective ending. For example, you have the NCR, you have Caesar's Legion, you have Mr. House, and you also have yourself if you really don't want to follow any authority. So yeah, you choose you kind of decide which faction you want to help out in the beginning, and then you start doing like missions based on like what you want to do with the faction, or like what the faction needs of you. Modular storytelling is basically the story can go places like that. Sorry, that was the most horrible way I could like put it. The story should go places. Yeah, it should go places. But anyway, so I think modular storytelling is like the most flexible method you could probably use, because it's not like linear where it's just like oh, this event happens and then this event happens and you can do nothing about it. And it's not like fractal storytelling where it's like, okay, you can do something in the beginning, but like you're kind of locked. But like once you choose a side or once you choose a route, you're kind of locked into it. Modular storytelling is basically the story can kind of change depending on your actions, and within like various parts of the game. So for example, in Act 1, you might have like a choice that puts you into different pathings, Act 2.5 and Act 2, but end in the same way, which is Act 3, or end up in the same place as like Act 3. Or you could have.
Wait, hold on. We have a question here.
Okay.
No, it's just I just want to point out. I think a game that's kind of like this is Detroit Become Human. They have the flow charts at the end of each scene where you could kind of show what actions you could have done.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a really good visualization of the monster story.
Yeah, that is true, especially because you're not locked into like a particular like storyline. You can kind of go all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I actually have a quick question of my own. Would you consider a B plot of a narrative to be closer to linear storytelling or modular storytelling? I just want to know what you think about
A B plot. What would you give us an example?
So let's say, for example, let's think of Phineas and Ferb, right?
Right.
Where you have Phineas and Ferb being the A plot of a story,
Mhm.
and then you have the misadventures with Perry the Platypus and Dr. Doofenshmirtz being the B plot most of the time. And at some point, it kind of converges again into a singular plot with Phineas and Ferb having their inventions like disappearing because of Perry the Platypus's actions towards the end. So would you consider that more to be a modular way of storytelling, or just an example of linear?
I guess it would depend on the story itself, because there are like some games where the B plot or like the gameplay of a B plot can like actually change the main story quite a bit. So for example, in Black Ops 2, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, there are like, I forget what the name is technically for it, but the main story, there are several like side missions you could do, which is kind of like a strategy, kind of like a gameplay where you like set up these soldiers and like robots in order to thwart the enemy or like complete an objective. And whether or not you succeed in those missions can directly affect the main plot, which is like your regular old Call of Duty experience. So in that way, that could be modular storytelling, but typically with like a subplot, it might be relegated to linear storytelling because having both the main plot and the B plot be like modular is kind of really hard to do. So probably the B plot will just be affected by how modular the A plot is.
Okay, I see.
But yeah, I think it really depends on the game itself. So like on the right here, you got your standard like linear story, but then depending on what you do in these moments, and maybe especially in Act 3, you get different endings. This is probably one of the more common types of modular storytelling you will see. So like an example of this is maybe a horror game. Like does anybody know of Chilla's Art?
Yes.
Yeah, so in those type of games, you have various types of things you can do within the game that will lead you to different types of endings depending on how you execute them. So yeah, this is probably the easier type of modular storytelling you can do, because all you need to do in order to achieve this is to kind of set up choices throughout the story that'll lead you to one of these different endings. And it's also it's also like a way of storytelling that like people can kind of get easily. So like if you say, oh, this story has like 5 different endings, but like the main plot is kind of like going to be the same, and while your like choices pile up, then people can get behind that probably. So it can get kind of crazy. So these are very big. These are like very like big scope games. And if you try and do this within a VGDC pitch project, your team might actually like hate you, and they might try and plot an assassination. So yeah, if I had to say what type this is, probably modular. But like, yeah, you can get like really crazy with some of these plots, and it can also get really tiring for you. So be careful. And this is an example of plotting that was happening for a game jam that I believe one of the previous writing directors was involved in. And as you can see, it's a lot. It's a lot. What the RA9? What's Detroit become human doing here? What's going on?
You didn't take a look at them before, or?
No, I wasn't able to read it before because I can only see it on my 14-inch laptop.
What the heck?
Well, that's very interesting. So if you want to take a look at this like later, I can. You'll probably be able to look at it through the YouTube section, or I could just like try and like post a clear picture of this slide, because I don't think YouTube compression will actually make this readable. Let's be honest here. But yeah, this can get really crazy. To where you really have to like sit down and try to decipher all this just to get a good idea of what the heck is being plotted here. And hopefully this won't be an issue when you start working on your pitch projects. So outlines and treatments, this is going to be how you plan out your story in a way that not only other people can see where the story is going, but you yourself can see where the story is going. So outlining methods and tools. You have your standard structures here, so you can outline based on these. So for example, you got the 3-act structure, which is something we've already shown like here in all 3 types of storytelling. With an optional pinch point method. If you guys don't know what a pinch point method is, it's basically a pinch point is a minor plot point you use in order to remind the audience of the stakes involved in the story. It is usually, or I guess always involves the agonist, and the pinch point helps set up the next like plot point. So like for example, have you guys seen the movie Alien? Or do you guys know of Alien? So basically, there is this scene where a baby alien, I believe there's an example being used, basically bursts out of like someone's chest, and then before the team can actually take care of it, the baby alien like basically crawls away into an air vent. So the main plot point would be, holy shit, there's an alien here, and the pinch point would be the alien has now run off, and now we don't know where the hell it is. It like helps the audience remember that this helps the audience remember the stakes in the story, and it helps rise up, and it helps put tension into the story. There's also the 8 sequence structure, which I'm gonna be honest, I don't actually know. And then the third point is hero's journey. And you might actually heard of this before because it's a very popular like type of structure. You'll probably be able to look up hero's journey and like be able to get like loads of examples of diagrams you can like follow, because a lot of stories actually do end up following hero's journey, whether or not they're actually trying to plan it out like that. There's also other outlining methods. Yeah.
Real quick, I'm gonna interject. The eight sequence story is basically like a technique used in filmmaking to divide a very lengthy like project, let's say like a movie, for example, and then you split that into like 8 separate blocks where you're focusing on a significant aspect for that 8-minute block, basically. So let's say, for example, your first 4 blocks of a 2-hour movie, which are like maybe like 12-15 minutes each, are all dedicated to focusing on one aspect. Like let's continue back with the alien example. That same scene where you see the alien burst out of the chest, that is like, you could think of it as like a miniature like story right there, like a vignette of sorts, where it connects to the next 8-minute block where you're focusing on one critical aspect of that story. So that's basically it's basically like the hero's journey, but you're focusing on just the one aspect of that journey, basically.
All right, thank you, Noah. That was actually very helpful. So there are tons of other structures you can use. For example, there's the Save the Kitten structure, which I don't know enough to recall from the top of my head, but it's also a really interesting structure. The thing you want to keep in mind though is you want to think of these like tools. You don't want to think of them as like a dead set requirement, or like a crutch. These outlining methods exist to help you plot out your story in an easier manner. You don't have to adhere to the 3-act structure. You don't have to adhere to 8 sequence structure. You don't even have to adhere to hero's journey. It's just, if you do use a structure like that, it'll just make plotting your story a lot easier. Now, do I use any of these structures in my stories? Not intentionally, but this could really help you out. Yeah.
So I feel like definitely like the 8 sequence structure is definitely something for higher scope.
Yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like examples off the top of my head, Mortal Kombat, like their story modes are like
Right.
Because this structure is more movie-like, usually movie-like games have this. Also like Metal Gear Solid games. Games where their cutscenes are like some big movie. So like there's all this structure of like bits of plot points throughout the duration. So I feel like, and most mostly high scope games have like, a lot of cutscenes that are enough to get along the movie or even longer. So, in other words, there should not, I feel like there shouldn't be any good project with that stuff.
No, yeah, glad you pointed that out though, yeah. I
Yeah,
forgot that Mortal Kombat is like a good example.
Yeah, because you said it was a movie, like it's usually used in movies. It's not
Yeah.
like movie like games are like big, they have 4 hours of.
It might be
I like if you see
blocking.
the Shark Become Human playthrough on YouTube, it's like
Oh my-
the full playthrough. They should rename it full movie, cause it's like a
Yeah.
1 hour, 2 hour like thing.
Yeah, if you like look on YouTube and you like see. And you see all the choices, all the best choices for like one route. I like watched the one with, I watched like Connor's route. It was only options with where Connor and Hank interacted with each other, and that was an hour and 20 minutes
Yeah,
of like footage. And this is just them interacting with each other. It's not like Connor going out to, it doesn't like include other like aspects of Connor's story, like like the intro sequence or like
we want Amanda,
Yeah.
or no,
Yeah.
not Amanda. Lady in his green.
Oh, the one in like the park. Yeah, she's walking around, just like.
Yeah, but what's his name?
Is it not Amanda? No.
Oh, wait, I think it is Amanda. I
Yeah.
think it's Amanda.
yeah, I think it might be Amanda. Yeah.
Yeah, and what was the lady, the title scene?
I think she was like a Chloe or something.
She was a Chloe, there you go. So
What?
yeah, Amanda and Chloe, okay.
Wait, were you talking about like
Yes.
the one where you like it's in the main menu, right?
Yeah, where you choose.
That's
it.
Chloe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright. Yeah, all right. So if you guys didn't know what we were talking about, basically we're talking about how 8-sequence structure. You probably can't use this in like pitch projects because the structure of it is like so attuned to like filmmaking. It's like more used for games that have like very high scope in terms of like cutscenes and like narrative. So stuff like Mortal Kombat, Last of Us, Detroit Become Human, those would use 8-sequence structures. We probably can't use that here because you probably won't be able to add in a lot of cutscenes. So probably either 3-act structure or hero's journey, just like a simpler like structure that you can use for like your games. Like I said, you don't need to use these as requirements. You just like they're there to help you, not cripple you and like make you depressed. So when you're planning out your story, there are several questions you need to ask yourself as you start making the story. What is the story about? Who is the story about? And what do they want or need? And how does gameplay come into the story? Because hopefully your gameplay will help complement the story, or the story will help complement the gameplay. If it just needs to interact in a well enough way to where people aren't going to be like, okay, why is this story here? What the hell are you guys thinking? So for the first question, actually, I think this is pretty like self-explanatory. So like first question would be like probably talking about like this guy's journey of traveling to this Demon King's castle in order to blow it up. So who the story is about would be about the protagonist. And then you'd have to consider, why do they want to blow up the Demon King's castle? Why do they need to? Maybe you can be like, oh, this is about a merchant, and the Demon King like basically stole all of his money, so he's gonna blow up his castle in revenge because he needs to satiate his revenge. And gameplay coming into the story, that's a more complicated topic that can't just be answered with that will be answered as the gameplay also develops. So hopefully the last question will start being answered as you and the designers start talking with each other and working together in order to come up with something good. So we have a sample outline here actually. I think I should have enough time to read all of this. Okay, so how do I like make this like not?
Like go away.
Well, I just need this to dock the top. Okay, that did nothing. Okay, so Act 1, Scene 1. Sam the chivalrous finds a magic sword which tells her to save the world. She follows its guiding light east. There, the sword tells her she will find the heirs to a line of royals who protect the world with a sacred type of magic. And then Scene 2 would be Sam finds the castle under attack by an evil queen. She aids the defenders, but only manages to save Prince Corn. Corn mourns for his lost family, but agrees to help Sam. He knows how to use the world-saving magic, but the key to the spell has been stolen by the queen. He joins Sam in his quest to retrieve the key and stop the end of the world. Act 2, Scene 1. Sam and Corn chase down the evil queen who's working to start the apocalypse. As she prepares the final spell to destroy the world, the heroes fight through the ranks and find their nemesis. Scene 2. Sam challenges the queen to a duel. Corn attempts to steal the key in the meantime, but the queen notices him. The world begins to fall apart around them, but Sam and Corn work together to beat the queen. Just in time, they stagger the queen and seize the key, saving the day. Scene 3. As the sun rises on the saved world, the evil queen has a change of heart and decides to become a force for good. She asks for forgiveness, but Corn has none for her. Corn takes the key and returns to rebuild his home. Sam and her magic sword go off to the sunrise for more adventures. All right, question. Is this an effective outline? What do you guys think? Do you think that this is like an effective outline? Why or why not?
Looks like my outlines.
I would say it does its job of.
Yeah, it's very simple and straightforward. There's no plot holes.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and I think this is a bad. And here's
Well,
why.
I do.
All right, so in only two scenes, or in only two acts, my bad, we go straight from the beginning of a story all the way immediately to the end with no like in between, like, oh, like what are they going through to actually get to the evil queen's lair? So in that act 2, we only cover like the 3 scenes, which already acts as like the conclusion of the story.
So what you're saying is that Act 2 is actually an Act 3.
Yeah, there's no actual act 2 anywhere.
That is a good point. Does anyone else want to raise like several points? I don't know if you guys can actually read this. I'm very sorry. I don't know if this is like even readable.
No, it's pretty.
All right. So I think. So judging from the responses, people think that this is an outline. Whether or not it's effective or not, I guess it depends on you. But there is another question that we need to ask ourselves when we start outlining these stories, and that is this out of scope? Because think about it. Even though this is like a pretty short outline, there are like actually a ton of things that you are now asking the other departments to help you with. If we have 3 characters, which is doable, but there's also castles. There's like 2 castles, one where we find Prince Corrin and one we find the evil queen in. There's like a bunch of events that we now have to like program. There's like we'll probably have to be forced into like a game, into like a more straightforward combat gameplay. So we need to. So as you ask yourself these questions, you'll soon realize that sometimes even smaller stories can have challenging asks for the rest of your team. So here are the questions that they should also ask yourself. What would the other team members need to do for the story if it were a game? How many characters are there? How many different environments or levels? And what type of gameplay might go with this story? I didn't actually think I was gonna answer those questions, but basically, you need to constantly ask yourself these questions alongside these questions. This is for all stories, this should be for all stories, like most modern mainstream stories, regardless of the medium. But for games, we also have to start considering these questions as well. So remember, don't overscope your game. Your teammates will be subtly grateful for it, even if they don't actually notice it. So yeah, ask yourself these questions when you start outlining your story, and be cautious of how many people can actually work on this game. Maybe if you were one of the VGDC team members who have like 20 plus members, then maybe you don't need to be so cautious of these questions. But there's a reason why most pitch projects and VGDC that have a story don't tend to have like super quote unquote epic stories. It's just it's a lot of work that you're asking of your other teammates. Work that your teammates may or may not want to do. So there is an activity planned for this workshop, but it is 2:40. I don't know if we will have time. But basically, we were gonna make an outline. Write an outline for a single level of a platformer game, one scene with multiple beats. Consider beats as player actions or interactions or, encounters. I was going to change the theme of this story, but I didn't have enough time. So just imagine the theme of the story is friendship. You can add any elements you want, but there are some samples here for inspiration. You can add in a button that opens a door. You can have a spike trap if you want to be really mean. You can have an NPC and you can have an enemy. How much time do we actually have to do this? So I will give you guys
15 minutes.
no, because if we do 15 minutes, it's gonna be people would like want to like share it, I guess.
Oh, okay.
All right. So do you guys want to like share it like publicly with other writers like right now, or do you just want to post it in the writing channel of BGDC?
I mean, they can do both and then we can. share them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. So what?
8 minutes?
Yeah, we can probably do 8 minutes. All right, so take 8 minutes to try and come up with an outline for a single level of a platformer game that has something to do with friendship. And yeah, I should probably put on some music for this. But I will be ending the recording. I'll be ending the recording now because
Bye-bye. Thanks for coming.
well, we're not ending the Zoom meeting. We're gonna stop the live stream.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, bye.
Yeah, for YouTube.
Bye.
All right, see ya, YouTube.
And